Hello and welcome to -4 points. This is the preview ahead of game week 9. We're going to be looking back at game week 8 and it's been a dramatic midweek. This week on Wednesday, which is yesterday when I'm recording this, Chelsea played in the Champions League and Lukaku and Werner were both injured. Now, this has shaken up everything. We were all planning on having Chelsea for the next 3 fixtures in our FPL teams. A lot of us had Lukaku. I think it was just over 3 million people had Lukaku in their teams. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I'm glad I didn't do an early transfer. I saw a lot of people did do early transfers this week and got Lukaku or even Werner. I saw people getting Lukaku and Werner in their teams. That's how good this Norwich at home fixture was. But it's shaken everything up. Safe to say, Lukaku's out of my team this week. But first, before we look at the watch list, before we look at my team for this coming week, let's take a quick look at how I did last week in game week 8. So here's how I did in game week 8. 60 points, which was fairly good considering it was quite a low scoring week. Did give me a green arrow on the overall rank, so I was happy about that. Still need to keep pushing up, but for now, that's a good place to be. 60 points, as I said, is good because it seemed that defenders and Salah were the only players that seemed to have got good numbers last week. There weren't a lot of midfielders and strikers that delivered that a lot of people had. So I was happy with that. Happy for Livramento again to come off the bench for Rafinha, who I never thought Rafinha would play, but he was starting just in case. But of course, after an international break, it was always unlikely that he was not going to play. So Livramento, I was happy for him to come in for Rafinha. I didn't want to do another transfer. Definitely wanted to keep Rafinha. So Livramento came in with 6. The other defenders did okay. Diaz, I was very upset with. Diaz didn't start. I'm not panicking. I don't think this is some sort of sign that Diaz won't be playing many games in the future. It's just how it is. I brought Diaz in last week and obviously Pep Roulette strikes again. I thought Diaz, De Bruyne and Ederson were the 3 safe ones. Maybe Diaz isn't fully safe, but I'm sticking with him now. I've just got other fires to put out. I can't bring in Cancelo, who I'd probably like, but Diaz should be okay going forward. And Tierney with 1 point wasn't great. I am having second doubts about this Arsenal defence. I do think a game like Palace could have been a good chance for a clean sheet. I'm unsure if that means Palace are really good in attacking this season or if it means Arsenal aren't as good defensively as I thought. But for now, Tierney will be staying. So Salah, Gray, Sarr is another player that I want to move on. Sarr had 2. I just think this Watford team are all over the place at the moment. They look so bad. Against Liverpool, they got battered and it could have been more really. And you can't really say, oh, but it's Liverpool, because a well-organised team at least keeps that down to 2 or 3. But Watford don't look great at the moment. I want to take Sarr out. I want to wait until maybe Ranieri can steady the ship. But for now, Sarr he's a good player, but just playing in a sinking ship. So he doesn't look good for the long run. Gray, 2 points, not so happy. And up front, again, the experiment is definitely failed. Lukaku and Ronaldo both blanking. A couple of 2s. It's not working. The Salah, Ronaldo, Lukaku combination is not working. Because of Lukaku's injury this week, it does mean that I can now finally disassemble that plan. So that plan is no longer going to be happening. That was the last week the Salah, Lukaku, Ronaldo trial existed. So we move forward. So 60 points, not so bad. Let's take a look at the watch list. These are players that I don't have in my team, but who I'm looking at getting in the near future. These are the 5 players that I have on my watch list. The first one is Rashford. I think he's been looking good since he came back from injury. He looks like he has some fire in his belly, a point to prove. He scored in midweek. He scored the weekend before when he came back from his injury. So I think we are a little bit lucky with Man United's fixtures that they are a little bit difficult. So we have a few weeks before we should start thinking of definitely getting those Man United assets in. But if you want to get ahead of the train, Rashford definitely looks good. I think it's worth reconsidering Bruno Fernandes, especially seeing as how Ronaldo hasn't quite been the player people thought he would be in terms of points. But for me, Rashford is the number one I'm looking for in future weeks. The other one is Son. Similar to Rashford, he does have a few tricky fixtures at the moment. And it is Son and Kane that I'm kind of weighing up. I just think that they're both too good not to consider when they have easy fixtures. And their next 3 game weeks are tricky. And then they have a great run of green fixtures, Spurs. So you could jump again on that train early, get Son, get Kane now. I just have other fires to put out, so I'm not doing that right now. But Son, I think, is the one I would look for, just because he's cheaper than Kane. And I think they do both attack sort of fairly similar. They kind of assist each other. If one of them assists, the other one scores. So I think at that price, Son is more appealing to me, but it could be Kane easily because Kane's on penalties as well. So I'll watch that one for the next 2 weeks, I think, and then bring in Son or Kane. The next three players are players that I would have brought in this week if it wasn't for the late Lukaku injury. So Jimenez was a player I was looking at bringing in instead of Ronaldo, ideally. But because I need to replace Lukaku, as I'll show you next, there are other moves I had to do this week. But Jimenez is definitely a player who I think is growing in confidence. Wolves look like they're a good attacking team. He didn't play last week because of the international break, but going forward, still with good fixtures, Jimenez is a great option. Chilwell is another one. I think now that left back play, is his. In the Champions League game, he came off early and Alonso came off the bench. I think that means Chilwell will definitely play against Norwich. I think he's Tuchel's number one pick now going forward. So I'd like to have Chilwell. I have Christensen in my team, so I do still have a Chelsea defender. Obviously, he's not as nailed on, but I guess Chilwell isn't as fully nailed on at the moment as well. So maybe because I didn't bring him in this week because I couldn't, maybe that'll work in my advantage as I can just see for certain if he is the number one nailed left back. And Gabriel Jesus is the last one. He's played almost every game this season. He's going a little bit under the radar. The thing that's putting me off this is still he's a Man City player. He plays for Pep, so he could have played every game this season, scored in every game, and I still would be a bit like, well, maybe he'll play Foden on the right. Maybe he'll play Cancelo up further forward and play Walker behind him. You just never know. So that's what's putting me off him. And also at his price, 8.6, I'm just waiting to see how the likes of Antonio, Jimenez, Bamford, Calvert-Lewin, some of those are injured and some of them are coming back and they're all a little bit cheaper. And if they come back and start hitting the ground running, Jimenez is $1 million cheaper. So if I'm just keeping an eye on him, I just maybe give him a week or two. But Jesus, if you have him, he's a good differential at the moment. So those are the 5 players I picked. They're the players in my watch list. So you may be thinking, why haven't you included certain other players? But they might be in my team. So you'll see that team now. So this is the team that I'm going with for game week 9. Here we have it. This is my team for game week 9. As the channel name suggests, -4 points. We're living up to our brand. We are staying on brand for sure. It's -4 points again this week. I'm doing 2 transfers. I didn't want to. My plan was I had Lukaku and Ronaldo up front, and my plan was to get rid of Ronaldo this week for Tony. That was my plan, and then to use that money, keep the money banked, and just wait and see what happens next week. I think that is a good plan. If you've not done your transfer yet, and you want to get Lukaku out, I think a cheaper striker, bringing Lukaku out for a cheaper striker, and then saving that money, and just giving it another week to see who you want to bring in, because I think the obvious picks are the Spurs, Son and Kane, or Vardy at Leicester. They seem to be the big obvious picks, but I just have doubts about them all. With Vardy, I just think, Leicester they look like they've got their form back together. But you saw Daka in the midweek score 4 goals, and the week before that in the week, Vardy only scored 1 goal, and Iheanacho also scored and assisted, I think. So I just think with Leicester, I'm going to keep watching them because I think, yes, Vardy's going to be a good asset for them. But if they keep playing 2 strikers up front, it could be the case where you could pick the other one. So you could have Vardy and then it'll either be Iheanacho or Daka. So if Daka now comes into the team and is really good and looks like at 7.1, he's much cheaper. So I'd go for him. So I'm waiting to see with Leicester because I'd like to have the cheaper of the strikers. And the same with Spurs. They have tricky fixtures. And I've still not fully decided whether to do Kane or Son. So Tony's coming in this week and I've got 4 million in the bank. The other transfer I've done is Havertz for Sarr. Now, I think Havertz is just such an exciting option at the moment. It is a bit of a risk. They don't have Lukaku and Werner, so you'd think Havertz is the number 1 choice to play as a false number 9. However, I do remember Mason Mount playing there before, and it wouldn't surprise me if he tried something like Ziyech as a false 9 or Hudson-Odoi as a false 9. He could do a lot of things, but I think it's worth the risk. I think with Chelsea's next 3 fixtures, if Werner and Lukaku are out for all 3, then Havertz is such an exciting option, and it is a punt. He might not play. He might play slightly behind. He might not even start. You never know, but I think it's worth the gamble with these fixtures. And I'm even going as far as the captain Havertz just to fully double down. I think if you're doing a -4, there is that rule. If you're doing -4 points, it's always a good idea to captain that player you're so certain on bringing in is going to do well. And if they're worth the -4 points, why not captain them? So if Havertz starts against Norwich, he could possibly get a couple of goals. It could be very exciting. So I'm going to captain him, especially because Salah has Manchester United away. And even though their form isn't so great at the moment, Man United did win midweek. And you do wonder if their confidence is up. It is a big game. It is almost a derby game for those two teams. So they do say form goes out the window and tensions will be high. And Liverpool could be tired. They had a tough game midweek against Atletico Madrid. So Salah's not going to be captain. I have seen a lot of people captaining Salah, and I do understand why. He is almost fixture proof, and I think if I get stung this week and Salah does really well, I think Salah will just be my captain every week without thinking. But for now, I'm having one last punt, and I'm going to go for Havertz. So the two transfers I've done are bringing in Havertz for Sarr, because I think Sarr had Everton away, and I didn't feel confident about him. Possibly 2 points again for Sarr. And I took Lukaku out for Tony. I did want to take Ronaldo out, so Ronaldo survives another week, which I'm not that happy about. I don't see him doing that much against Liverpool. But like I said, it is a big game. Maybe he nicks a goal. Maybe he gets on pens. Maybe he gets a goal. So Ronaldo is staying this week just because he has to, because I had to take Lukaku out. I didn't want to be stuck with Lukaku on the bench. I didn't want to hold such an expensive player and not be using him. So Tony's come in. I think with Brentford, I watched them against Chelsea last week, and I was watching the game thinking, I'm getting a Brentford player this week. It was either Mbeumo or Tony. I was thinking I'm definitely getting one, because they looked so good against Chelsea. At their stadium, the atmosphere is great. They're really pressing. They were so unlucky not to score against Chelsea. They hit the post. Mendy had some amazing saves. I just think against Leicester, with a defence that's not as good as Chelsea's, and they have a point to prove. And Brentford are one of those teams that don't have European football, so they've had a whole week to rest, whereas Leicester haven't, whereas other teams haven't. So I think having a Brentford player is a good move. So they have Leicester at home this week, and then they have a nice run of fixtures. And most people were looking at getting Brentford players in for that nice run of fixtures. I just think, Tony or Mbeumo are as likely to score as Vardy, because they look so good at home. They're so attacking. And at his price, it allows me an extra week just to think about other transfers I want to do next week. So I've got 4 million in the bank. My squad value has come down massively because I've taken Lukaku out for Tony. But I'm hoping to put that money back in my team next week into a Leicester asset or a Tottenham asset, depending on who impresses more this weekend. So in defence, it's looking fairly solid. Trent is a slight doubt. I'm tempted to put Livramento in for Trent, but you just can't drop Trent. He's kind of like Salah. You would never drop him. So Livramento is going to be on the bench, and I'm fairly happy with that, because Christensen could possibly be dropped, so Livramento could come in for him anyway. So I'm Trent, Christensen, Diaz, and Tierney at the back. Sanchez in goal. I'm not happy about my keeper, but I couldn't make a keeper transfer this week. It's very rare that you can make a keeper transfer. So Sanchez has a tricky game this week and next, but then he has a great run of fixtures. So I'm just going to have to sit through these next 2 weeks with my Sanchez as goalie and hope he makes a lot of saves. In midfield, Salah, he's not got the captaincy, but he's there. Havertz with the captaincy, Gray and Rafinha. Gray and Rafinha both have good-looking games. Watford at home and Wolves at home. They are two good games, so I'm hoping for... I don't want to see 2-2s. I hope for a little bit more than that from them too. And then up front, Ronaldo and Tony. On the bench, Steele, Livramento, Allen and Gelhardt. I've done 2 transfers. Like I said, it's -4 points, but I'm hoping if Havertz gets some kind of return, that's the -4 points paid for. That's my team for game week 9. Let me know in the comments. Let me know on Twitter at -4 points what you think. The YouTube game people, help a brother out, like and subscribe. I'll see you next week, and good luck with your game week 9s.